Gang, the lesson I think we need to take with us, the history lesson here, is that there's a common reason why regimes ultimately fall. Remember, just like we're seeing today, regimes can look very formidable, very impressive, and impenetrable, in fact. I'm having my Biden moment. They can look unassailable. And this is, of course, because they occupy all the levers of cultural power. And in exercising all the levers of cultural power, there's a sense that there's no escape, that we're basically locked in a totalitarian prison. And the perception is there's simply no way out. And I know a lot of you feel that way. I know. You tell me. But I want you to take heart in history. There is a dynamic, an ultimately fatal dynamic for all illegitimate regimes, that governments and tyrannical states simply can't control. And this is the dynamic known as delegitimation. Now, delegitimation is the process whereby institutions, regulations, and authorities increasingly lose their legitimacy. That is, their trust, their confidence in the eyes of more and more populations. And we are seeing that here. Back in 2010, pollster Scott Rasmussen and Doug Schoen published a study evidencing a major paradigm shift taking place among the American electorate. This was during the days of the Tea Party movement, and Rasmussen and Schoen found substantial data indicating that the old political divides between left versus right, liberal versus conservative, they were all dying away. And a new political divide was noticeably redefining American politics. A divide between the people versus the political class, the ruled versus the rulers, the ordinary American versus the oligarch, as it were. Voters were increasingly rejecting the horizontal opposition of Republican versus Democrat, and instead seeing themselves in a vertical opposition as being in direct conflict with politicians from both parties who were perceived as ruling top down for their own benefit at the expense of the constituents they supposedly represented. And we're seeing this in real time. Back in 1964, 70% of the American electorate believed the government was being run for the benefit of all. Today, that number has plummeted to just 19%. 8 in 10 Americans believe the government is run for the benefit of the rich and powerful. Keep that in mind. Remember that 8 in 10 believe the government today is run for the benefit of the rich and the powerful. The other 2 in 10, I'm assuming they're the rich and the powerful. What if I told you there was a small group of investors who wildly outperformed the market? Well, there is, and you know exactly who they are. Corrupt politicians like Nancy Pelosi and establishment senators have been using their security clearances and exclusive knowledge to their advantage in the market for decades now. They know when sales are up. They know what earnings are going to be. They know about legislation, incoming Fed changes, you name it, a whole host of other inside baseball tips that gives them an unfair advantage when picking stocks. When these bigwigs make moves, odds are they know something. But thanks to a little-known SEC database, guess what? We can see what and when these people are buying. Not only do we get to see it in real time, but we get to piggyback on their trades to gain the same advantage for ourselves perfectly legally and ethically. My friend Ross Givens has been tracking insider trading for years, and his recommendations have led to investment returns of over 200%. Some have hit as high as nearly 1,500%. And according to him, there's no better way to beat the market. Now it's your turn. Click on that link below right now and learn how you too can learn to trade like Pelosi. Click on that link and learn how to gain an insider advantage for yourself. Now, what's so interesting here is that Rasmussen and Schoen were uncovering this paradigm shift here in the States at the very same time British scholar Matthew Goodwin found virtually the same paradigm shift happening all throughout Europe. Upwards of 70% of Europeans overall believe that their government and their politicians rule in accordance with the values, interests, and concerns of a political class, not the people. 70% of Europeans across the continent believe that your average MP, your average member of parliament, does not care about them. And they're right. While surveys show that the vast majority of the British population believe that immigration is detrimental to society, less than 20% of their politicians agree. There is a massive chasm of opinion and sentiment between the people and their politicians. And the numbers have only gotten worse since these studies. The first one was in 2010, the second was in 2016. Every poll out there now today, every poll shows that Americans' trust in our establishment institutions has imploded. The latest Gallup polling shows a record low level of trust for the presidency, for Congress, for our legal system, our medical system, big business, big tech, and most especially the legacy media. Is it any wonder? Do you remember what I said? I gave you a little stat here. How 8 in 10 people believe that government runs for the benefit of itself and of those in power. Trafalgar just did a study a couple of months ago, and they found that exactly 79% of Americans, again, 8 in 10, believe we live in a two-tier justice system that protects the establishment, the wealthy, the powerful, at the expense of average citizens. This is delegitimation. This is the increasing loss of confidence and trust in our public institutions, regulations, and authorities that govern our society. And if you want to know where delegitimation ultimately leads, just take a look at the Berlin Wall today. Just ask the surviving members of the Soviet Politburo what happens when delegitimation reaches critical mass among populations. Gang, that is what we are ultimately seeing today. We are seeing a regime that is crumbling under the weight of its own delegitimation. That's what last night was ultimately all about. The very fact that you had so many talking heads last night in legacy media trying to prop Biden up artificially only further exacerbates the delegitimacy. There's no way around this. This regime is in its dying throes. Now is the time for us to end this empire once and for all, and begin together to endeavor a great and lasting Republican renewal.